Even aware that there is a storm, or even a beast. You're just a rock and roll band, doing and playing and dressing in all the things you ever dreamed of. And if we were famous for being infamous, as some people like to insist, both the fame and the infamy were mere byproducts of everything else. We never sat down and mapped out a game plan. There was no round table in some bunker-like headquarters where we spent hours with strategists, consultants, and their ilk, and brainstormed the outrage that would win the next headline. Nobody told us to behave like we did. We did it because that was who we were, and that was what we wanted to do. And when it was done, we did something else. Other people turned the New York Dolls into legends. We just went along for the ride. And yet, when I look back on that 3-year span in which we held the world in the palm of our hands, and then had it snatched away again, and the years since then, when we were reborn as an historical precedent, year zero of punk, the Roanoke colonists of the New Wave's New World. Check your history books. You'll see what I mean. When I compare our fate and fame with those of so many of the groups who once outsold us, one famous saying keeps coming back to mind. A phrase that you used to see a lot on the streets of Paris, daubed on walls, or spray-painted on placards. À vaincre sans péril, on triomphe sans gloire. To vanquish without peril is to triumph without glory. Like Daffy Duck in that cartoon, we vanquished. We triumphed. And we wanted to give them a killer show every night. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. It's a rich man's war, but a poor boy's fight. Chapter 1. Coca-Cola Whiskey. One of my earliest memories is of my homeland being bombed by the British. First the sirens, shattering the evening with their banshee howl, and the panic on the streets as people ran for whatever shelter they could find. Then the blackout, plunging a city of 3 million people into darkness. And then the bombs. They were not falling directly on us, which was why, after a while, I would be allowed to stand on the balcony, overlooking the darkened city, staring out past the towering tops of the mosques as they were silhouetted against the moonlight towards the horizon. Even from 80 miles away, though, I could see our searchlights struggling to pick out the enemy aircraft. I could see the glow of the flares that lit the bomber's path, and I could hear the rhythmic croomph, croomph, croomph of each successive bomb blast. Behind me, my father would be crouching beside an illegal radio, a big brown bake-like contraption, listening into the news as it broke across the shortwave networks, telling us to hush if we so much as gasped or spoke. He was taking no chances. He'd even broken the little light that once lit up the radio dial to make sure no one knew what he was doing. And we would hush, because who knew what technology was raging against us? If the bombers could see the tiniest light, then perhaps they could hear the softest murmur. At any moment, the bombers, British Valiants and Canberras, might turn their attention away from the airfields that were their supposed target, and seek out the child who had just spoken too loudly. In fact, the next day, you would hear that they had. That Cairo radio was reporting that the outskirts of Cairo had been hit with incendiaries, and charred bodies still lay where they had fallen amid the ruins. The British and the French, who fought alongside them, denied the rumors, of course, insisting that their only targets were our airfields. But when you're 5, you don't know who to believe. You just know you're being bombed. Egypt in October 1956 was a land in turmoil. Almost precisely 4 years earlier, in 1952, Gamal Abdel Nasser Hussein, a lieutenant colonel in the Egyptian army, had masterminded the overthrow of the monarch, King Farouk. He installed a new government and proclaimed Egypt a republic, shattering the centuries of foreign power and influence that had ruled the nation until then. First the Ottomans, then briefly the French, back to the Ottomans, and then the Brits. 500 years of outside occupation were ended, to be superseded by what? The revolution was bloody. There was rioting in the cities, foreigners were attacked and even murdered by gangs of nationalist supporters.